Oh ja.
So, wir sind jetzt live. Guten Abend,
Hallo.
Schauer.
Guten Abend auch von mir aus Tbilisi.
Guten Abend aus den Malediven. Und ja, hier wachsen leider keine Walnüsse, nur Kokospalmen. Kokosnüsse sozusagen. Aber in Tbilisi wächst im Moment, ja, es ist gerade Winter, liegt Schnee, Ivo, oder?
Nee, Schnee, ich glaube, das hat man hier schon lange nicht mehr gesehen. Zumindest nicht in der Stadt. Also, ich habe vorhin mit einem Kumpel geredet in Gudauri, da war heute Schneesturm. Aber du weißt ja, wie es in Georgien ist. Fährst 30 Kilometer und hast eine andere Klimazone. Also hier in Tbilisi waren heute, so würde ich sagen, 7, 8 Grad, Sonnenschein. Draußen auf der Farm.
English, Ivo. Let's switch to English because we
Oh,
will have
yeah, yeah.
an international audience, I guess. And
Oh,
that's
right.
how we launch the webinar.
No, no problem. Well, yeah, here in Tbilisi, it's sunny, while out on the farm, it was it was raining like crazy. They had to stop working. David actually came back today, and meanwhile, out in Gudauri, it's a snowstorm. They had a blizzard, and my friend was stuck there when he wanted to come back. So no, there's no snow here in Tbilisi though, and I doubt there will be any in the next few weeks.
Okay. Yeah, let's wait maybe two more minutes and then just start. Wait for some more
Sure.
audience to come in, and then we can start with your presentation, and then later answer the questions of the audience.
Right. How's the weather out there in Maldives?
Well, pretty warm. Yeah, had luck, no rain so far. Good conditions to snorkel. Saw whale sharks and manta rays every day. So yeah, it's you can live here for a while.
Did you get arrested for non-compliant, non-Sharia compliant behavior? Yeah.
Not yet, but maybe tomorrow.
Christoph, always living on the edge. They should just look into your Instagram account. I think they must arrest you immediately then.
Yeah, when I have luck tomorrow, then I get upgraded to the $50,000 a night villa.
Oh, maybe you're immune to possible threats then.
Yeah. No, it's
Are
always
you going to stay
chance
this?
to make friends with the waiters. So the I was asking about that like thing, and the waiters asked, "Yeah, travel bloggers can live there for free because it's still built." Then I said, "I'm a travel blogger," and now he
Oh,
speaks with the hotel manager to bring me into. So maybe it works, maybe not.
you mean this like undersea sort of apartment they have, or?
No, it's the Muraka. It's called. It's like the first undersea villa in the
Yeah.
world. So it's basically a bathroom and bedroom and so on under the water, and you can have fun in the bedroom while sharks swim above you and things like that. Yeah. So that's it.
So, sounds like something that has to be ticked off your travel list.
Yeah, definitely for the bucket list. But anyway, maybe it's five minutes after. Let's just start. So our audience doesn't need to wait that long. So I'm happy. Yeah, you're here again, Ivo, with me, and this time apparently without technical problems. So we can just start.
Oh, let's
Um,
hope
for
we're not
everyone
done.
for everyone who doesn't know Ivo, Ivo is my local business partner in Tbilisi in Georgia. He's not Georgian himself. He's actually also German. But settled down in Georgia after living in, where did you live? In Malta, in Montenegro, in some other countries. Ivo is a trader from like early youth on. He trades derivatives and things like that, and he's very knowledgeable about every kind of investment. So he really got me excited about this investment we are now presenting to you, Walnuts in Georgia. And actually, we might have another of our partners, Alex, American, basically our lawyer, coming into the call as well later. But Ivo, it's your beginning. You can start with the presentation, please.
Yes. All right. You know, let me see if I can switch over here and share my screen with you. Well, then I can also show you my presentation. I think.
Yeah.
That should be all right.
That works.
Okay, fantastic. All right. No, wait a minute. Okay, cool. So just as Christoph said, my name is Ivo, and I will presenting you our current Chandler Walnut development in Kakheti in Georgia. I'm living here in Georgia myself full time now. I've settled here about 1.5 years ago after coming briefly to the country and seeing the vast opportunities that it offers. And yeah, I'm not a farmer. As Christoph said, I'm primarily a trader. I trade different derivatives, mainly in the US futures market. And my main approach has been arbitrage strategies, but also macro-driven strategies. And as a macro trader, I like to look at things top down. So with that in mind, I thought we'll start off the whole presentation by looking at agricultural investments in general. So agriculture, you know, agriculture is one of the oldest investment forms that we've seen in the history of man. For thousands of years, people have been farming, and while modern mechanized agriculture resembles very little to what humans did 1,000 years ago, it nevertheless has major impact on all our lives since it provides us with our food. Nevertheless, the sector has been giving not that much attention over the last decade. On one hand, that is because the low inflationary environment that we've seen has brought down many soft commodities. And as some of you may know, many soft commodities like grains or wheat have been in a decade-long downtrend. And on the other hand, people have been much more fascinated by tech or other investments. That said, though, agricultural land has always been a very safe protection against inflation. And as many of your viewers know, Christoph, I'm sure the latest bull cycle has been characterized by the ridiculous amount of cheap money that our central banks have pumped into the system, and meanwhile also a very low inflationary environment. But as central banks slowly step back from their monetary experiments, we can see right now that global rates are picking up, and therefore inflation is starting to pick up as well. And I think with that in mind, soft commodity prices have, if you're looking at the long-term view, have a long way to go from here. Yes. Meanwhile, agriculture is seeing some proper supply constraints that are coming up. While agricultural technology has seen some innovative developments in the last year, the truth is the sector is struggling to find people. If you look at the average age of the US farmer, it's 55 years nowadays. And why is that? Well, to little surprise, it has to do with the land exodus. People are leaving rural areas and moving to cities because agriculture is not an attractive investment for many people. So, I mean, I'm very happy to have found someone who's actually willing to stay there out on the farm most of the time. Yeah, and lastly, agriculture 3.0 offers huge benefits. The amount of benefits that data processing has is just, there's no words for it. I can show you drone pictures that we are currently capturing where we can see perfectly which sectors of our farms are irrigated properly and where we can see good growth in the plants and where not. Furthermore, you've seen extreme development in machine learning and image processing in the recent years, and I think in the next 5 years this will even grow even faster. So the capabilities we have there to monitor our crops are just tremendous. And well, at the same time, while you see these supply constraints, everything happens against the backdrop of extremely rising population growth. This comes together with higher wealth, and higher wealth is usually correlated with higher protein consumption. While on one hand, it usually means high meat consumption, especially in the developed world, we've seen an increasing trend for vegetarian and alternative protein sources. And this is right where walnuts come in. So I've met with Alex before, and he introduced me to the project. And when I heard that, I thought he's actually spot on exactly that point. We can see that, in Germany or anywhere else in Europe, where the demand for walnuts is just increasing tremendously. With that in mind, let's look at the consumption. Consumption of walnuts and of all tree nuts basically has grown more than 50% over the last 10 years. And current forecasts see that there's a compound annual growth of at least 3.1% over the next 10 years, year on year. And why is this consumption rising so tremendously? Well, on one hand, we've seen the wealth growth and higher consumer awareness as the main drivers. As wealth grows, consumption for luxury food is growing. And at the same time, over the last 10 years, many of those so-called low-fat myths have been shown as completely wrong. So we've found out, that walnuts with high protein and high fat contingents are extremely healthy for you. And, actually, antique knowledge was always that the walnuts are very healthy food for you and were included in many of the richest diets. For instance, the Greeks called them the god's fruit. And rightly so, because we have unsaturated and omega-10 fats, which are very rich in walnuts. There are a lot of proteins in it, and it is known to reduce so-called bad cholesterol. Nowadays, they're widely used in the food industry, but also find applications in cosmetics, and especially also very strongly rising in healthcare. Yes. So much about the overview to the walnuts. Let's go ahead and look at the projects that we have. Our farms are located in East Georgia, in the region of Kakheti. Georgia, as most of you know, but probably some don't, lies in the region of the Caucasus and is bordering Armenia, Azerbaijan, Russia, and Turkey. We have in the north, it is the Greater Caucasus Mountains are, and in the south we see the smaller Caucasus Mountains. So Georgia is basically surrounded by mountains, which has a severe impact on the climate as well, which I'll talk about in a moment. Georgia has access to the Black Sea in the west and has a deep sea port there. Yes, we have 2 plots there, which I'll be talking about today. We have other farms that we have under management, but those 2 plots are important for our investment today, so let's focus on those 2. One of them, plot 1, is a 38-hectare Chandler walnut orchard that was planted in September 2017. And one of them is a 35-hectare Chandler walnut orchard that will be planted in winter of this year. The development is currently undergoing, and I'll show you a few pictures of it right now. Well, first of all, here are the 2 plots, and here are our pictures. This is our 38-hectare development. As you can see, there's already the tree rows very nicely visible. And here are the trees in close-up. Right now, they don't look like that anymore. They have basically thrown off all the leaves. I've been there about, well, maybe 3 weeks ago, and they just look like poor sticks in the ground now. Hard to imagine them becoming very big trees in the future, but is what it is. This is our current development undergoing. This picture was actually taken while you were there, Christoph, on our last visit in August. And this is what it looks right now. We have leveled the land, about 7 times mulched through it. Now we just finished building the lake. That's why the excavator was there. And actually right now we are starting to build the irrigation system of plot 2. Moving on, why should you invest or be interested in investing in walnuts in Georgia? Well, walnuts have a very large history in Georgia, actually. The truth is they've been growing here for thousands of years. And they were widespread in the country until the 19th century. However, then the Industrial Revolution in Europe generated so huge demands for the tree bark that most of the walnut forests have been deforested and cut down. But there's still very favorable conditions for walnuts to grow here, and I will lay them out for you right now. First of all, it's the climate. The climate in Kakheti, where we are planting the trees, is ideal for growing the trees. It's subtropical to mildly temperate, which means we have hot summers and mildly cold winters. Walnuts need cold temperatures, but should preferably not expose to freezing temperatures. As you can see here on the climate diagram, usually the climate in winter barely drops below 0, but usually ranges in a 0 to 7 degrees Celsius range. And that's exactly what these walnuts need. They should have 7 to 1,000 hours of sub 7 degrees Celsius temperatures. Lastly, the soil conditions are just perfect for them. Many soils in Europe particularly have been depleted by organic matter over the decades of strong agricultural use. Here in Georgia, while Georgia has been known as in the Soviet Union as the perfect place to grow fruits, the soils here are still in much better condition than they are in Europe. In our case, for example, we have a light clay soil that allows very good irrigation with solid water drainage. But despite that Georgia is still a developing country, the infrastructure that it has is very useful for the agriculture. Kakheti, the region where we are growing our trees, is the Georgian breadbasket and accounts for 38% of agricultural output. It's very well connected to Tbilisi. Here from basically from my living room onto the farm, I need about 90 minutes. So I can go there basically for a day trip easily. There's a highway that is currently where the construction is currently undergoing, and which will probably reduce the time another 15 to 20 minutes. Great thing is the highway will be built just 3 kilometers away from our farm and connected very well to the highway. We have a Soviet channel that is coming from the Yori River and connects the whole region that we're in with water. This channel is currently renovated, and it basically feeds the whole area and provides us with a year-long water supply. Water, in fact, is never an issue. You know, it's as basic as novice knowledge is, but plants need water. Surprise! And luckily, Georgia has abundance of water. As a matter of fact, it has so much water that just to give you an example, about 80% of energy is generated by hydroelectricity here in Georgia, which of course on one hand is because of the amount of mountainous areas, but also because there are so many rivers here in Georgia. Furthermore, the airport is very close, and we have the deep sea port about 300 kilometers away inside Georgia, the Poti deep sea port. And lastly, and a little surprise for you, Christoph, as I've spoken to David about 2 days ago, we've managed to get a contract for electricity supply. And starting from next year, we will have electricity, I think about 240 kilowatt hours on the farm. So we have full year electricity. It's so much, you could basically supply a whole village with that, which is amazing for us.
So we can mine some Bitcoin as well. That's good.
Yeah, we can mine Bitcoins. if you want to do that, you know, maybe set up a free trade zone there and mine some Bitcoins if they're still worth something next year. Let's see about that. They are well connected. Georgia is well connected to very important walnut markets. As you see here on the border on the map, you know, Turkey is about 300 kilometers away from Georgia. Turkey is the biggest walnut importer in the world. This is mainly because of processing, but it also uses so much walnuts for itself. Just to better understandment, they are the 4th largest producer, but still a net importer for walnuts. At the same time, we have Russia in the north, and Russia is a market that has been seen some very strong growth, and as you will see in a moment, has also there you can fetch some very high prices. Lastly, Georgia, as one of the few countries in the region, has an associate agreement with the EU, which while these free trade agreements can arguably sometimes worsen trade, but in the case of tree nuts in particular, there are no restrictions, and therefore it actually benefits the Georgian market to export into the EU. We don't plan necessarily to export into the EU, given the amount of all these requirements that you have to fulfill in order to do so, but given the very high prices in the area, it might become attractive at a certain point. Let's move on. Why is Georgia very attractive as well? Well, it's mainly also because of cost arbitrage. Although the land is very arable, it is extremely cheap in comparison to other countries. Here in Kakheti, you can buy some of the perfect land for about $5,000 a hectare. Just to give you an idea, we were in Portugal 2 weeks ago to meet with some of the producers there, and they pay at least 3 times the price if you want to. And not to mention that their soil is much worse than the one we have. It's just, you know, for developments of that size, you would need so much more money just to get started. Of course, this has to do with the purchasing power that is much lower here in Georgia, and the higher debt. But, well, this is what geo-arbitrage is about, right? Then we have little regulatory environments. There's no taxes for land purchase. There's low property taxes. And generally, you know, it's very easy to run a business in Georgia. The recent, I think it came out last month, Ease of Doing Business ranking placed Georgia at number 6 of the easiest countries to do business worldwide, in the ranges of Singapore, Ireland, and yeah, you know, all these, it's just ridiculous, all these countries that are well known for being, you know, ideal for running a business, and then there's Georgia alongside. It's quite entertaining. And lastly, wages, of course, they are so low. Just to give you an idea, we pay at the moment about 8 to 12 euros per worker per day. So it's very easy to hire you know, right now, I think next month when we're starting to plant the trees, we will hire about hundreds of people who are just there to, you know, drill the holes in the grounds, put the holes in the irrigation system, and connect the drippers. And all of that, you know, is just so much more cost efficient if you can hire 100 people for $8. Yes. Okay, so let's look at the type of walnut that we're growing, because we're growing a very particular type, the so-called Chandler walnut tree. This is a Californian hybrid tree that was developed in 1979. The tree is grafted onto a wild root system. So you take a wild root system, usually a local variety, and place lab-grown walnut on top of it. This helps you that on one hand you have the rootstock, which is wild and therefore more resilient against diseases, but you have the trunk, which is of course grown in the lab and therefore has the capabilities to produce much more nuts. We're lucky that one of our consultants that I kind of met by accident. Yeah, well, you may call it accident, but one of these experts that we're working with is Bruce Bailey, who is a student of Mr. Chandler himself. The Chandler walnut tree is nowadays one of the most popular walnut trees. And why is that? Well, on one hand, it has a very late leafing and blooming period that helps the tree to protect from potential freezing. And the tree manages to start producing nuts in a very early stage of its lifespan. Usually, a 2-year-old seedling can produce nuts in the 3rd to 4th year after plantation. So, and then after 3 to 4 years, 3 to 4 years after the first production, it reaches full maturity. So in the 7th or 8th year, it starts to producing at full production. Then what makes the Chandler walnut tree particularly interesting is that it has a very light and very soft shell. So I don't know if you've had the chance to hold one, but it's, you know, very different to the standard walnuts that that are known from, I don't know, your childhood, because the shell is so soft you can just crack it in your hand, which makes it of course more attractive. Then it has a very high oil contingency, up to 70%, and usually these walnuts are measured in quality by the amount of oil contingency. And lastly, the tree is more disease resistant. On one hand, because it has high bittern levels in the leaves, so usually insects or bugs don't like to eat the leaves as much as they like to eat other trees. And the green husk, which is of course around every walnut, protects the fruit from potential predators. It's very hard for them, to break through the husk and then underneath the husk find the shelled walnut in order to eat the fruit itself. So that makes it more attractive. Yes. Okay, just to give you an idea, I want to show you our current, for project 2, the current development cost. Our conservative estimates right now are about 2.8 million USD. This allows us to not only develop the orchard, but cover all expenses for the next 5 years. We can pay workers, our accountants, pay for all the fertilizers and everything else what we need in terms of supplies. But it also allows us to invest into machinery, into drying and sorting facilities, and to automate most of the processes very early into the project. That means buying automated shakers so we don't have to harvest the trees manually, drones for surveillance, as I've mentioned before, and most importantly, to build the very advanced drip irrigation system that we have right now. We're using a system by Netafim, which are probably the best producers of drip irrigation systems in the world. And as you can see, the irrigation system makes by large the most expense of our development here with 22%. But what that means is we have literally a state-of-the-art irrigation system. For instance, we can monitor and monitor our how you say, the evaporation levels, and basically measure constantly what the current evaporation in the soil as well as in the leaves are, and then give the trees the water based on that. So we can always see how much water does the tree actually need, and therefore supply the trees with the ideal number of water they need to grow in perfect conditions. Speaking of nutrition as well, we use only the highest quality as far as right now, Belgium and Canadian nutritions. Yes, so far about our development, let's look at the yield. As I mentioned earlier, the Chandler walnuts take about 3 to 4 years until the first harvest. In year 4, we expect about 6 kilograms per tree. And then the yield continues to rise until the tree reaches full maturity in year 7, where we expect about 35 kilograms per tree. So that means we expect a total production capacity of 560 tons of walnuts per year. And if you add the other plots that we currently have under management, we expect a total production of 1,200 tons per year. With that in mind, we would become the biggest walnut producer all over the Republic of Georgia. All right, let's look at prices. As I've mentioned, walnuts are very high in demand, and Chandler, being the most popular type, usually can fetch the highest prices. Here, I can show you a little screenshot from the website Twitch.com, which fetches prices from hundreds of thousands of producers worldwide. And this is just to give you an idea of what kind of prices to expect. And as you can see, the market is very fragmented, and depending on where you are in the world, the prices are very different. And of course, this has a potential risk, as price volatility will be high, but at the same time, it's an opportunity, because if you find a purchaser in the right country, you can fetch very high prices. Like I said early on, Russia is very interesting. If you look down on the very bottom, the price range in Russia is very high, but the prices are also very high. So while that also means that the import value is not so high in Russia, it has been rising continuously. And Georgia and Russia, although they had a few troubles in the past, the trade has actually been flourishing. Russia is the #1 importer of agricultural products in Georgia. And I think, it will be a very attractive market for us to import. And we have a few very good contacts there. Many of our partners have family there, and therefore this is a market we are certainly looking at alongside with Turkey. That's currently not here on the list, but like I said, Turkey is the largest importer, and it is another market that we are looking at. We have actually bought our walnuts in Turkey, and our suppliers there gave us the prices last year, which were about $4.6 per kilogram of Chandler walnut trees. Chandler walnut fruits. That's of course what I meant. Yeah, with that in mind, let's look at revenue expectations. So, like I said, plot 1 is planted a year earlier in 2017, and plot 2 will be planted by the end of the year. And therefore, plot 1 will generate its first yield most likely in 2022 and plot 2 in 2023. Using the Turkish prices as our baseline, we can expect a revenue of $815,000 in year 2023, and this will rise to about $2.5 million at full production in year 2027. Of course, these are estimates, and they can fluctuate strongly whether how the global conditions are looking, and it's just to give you an idea. Both prices as well as production can fluctuate. So how is it possible for the investor to participate? First of all, our main goal here was to offer a transparent investment vehicle. We wanted to avoid complicated regulatory frameworks and still offer a sound and legal investment product. For us, therefore, selling shares to such a large investor pool was not really an option, given the amount of crazy KYC and all other things that you need to employ in order to raise capital. What our lawyer, Alex, who I hope will still join us later during this webinar, came up with is a royalty investment contract. So royalties are mostly found in the service industry, but they also find common applications, for example, in the energy sector. But what is a royalty? As I think some of you might not be familiar with it. Royalties, they are often called a new hybrid way of financing, but the truth is they are as old as finance itself. Basically, what it means is that an investor receives a payout in exchange for allowing a business to use some kind of valuable, which in some cases may simply be money. You can look at it as some sort of sales commission. So let me give you an example, because royalties, they're commonly used in intellectual property, for example, patents or music royalties, which means whenever I use a song, I have to pay someone a certain royalty. But royalties are also very common, for example, when large energy corporations acquire oil or gas fields. That means as the process goes along and somebody uses this gas field, you have to pay a certain royalty to the holder of the gas field in order to use it. But they can be brought into basically any market. In our case, it means that the investor receives a certain percentage of the revenue stream in exchange for providing us with the capital. What are the advantages of that? Well, for us as the company, it means that we can fund the project and raise capital without having to hand away the company itself. You know, when we sell shares, we would eventually may lose some certain parts of the rights of the company, and we didn't want to do that. The management can still focus on running operations because there's no bank or no large investor telling them how to do things. Also, the management can focus on its operations rather than looking at exit strategies. As you know, especially, you know, looking at the what happened in the crypto sector in the last years, people raised money and then they just, you know, looked at getting out of the company as quickly as possible. This is not something that is very that like looks up in our situation, because investors and companies' interests are aligned. The payments, they're more flexible, as they are based on the actual revenue stream and not on a fixed interest rate. And lastly, these payments to the investors are seen as business expenses for the company and are therefore reducing our profits, which has a tax benefit. What are the benefits for the investors? Well, since the payments are based off the revenue rather than the profits, they make the investment somewhat more secure. Everyone knows how a smart accountant, you know, can make a profitable business lose money. You can reduce your company's profits, and therefore have no dividends or little dividends available to pay out to the investors. But with this system, we have our companies and our investors' interests aligned, because there's no way to reduce revenues. And therefore, if we as company want to maximize revenue, and as we maximize revenue, we will at the same time maximize the return for the investor. At the same time, as there's no participation, the investor must not care about the operations as an equity investment. Shares bring in responsibility, something that you don't really have to look out for here. But now an investor may ask, if there's no responsibility, and how is there any control? How can you assure that we're not scamming you, we're not running away with the money, or do whatnot? Well, first of all, I mean, let me say, everyone can scam you, but this should not, this should not be something this should be something that you should consider. But as a matter of fact, we're not here to commit any fraud. And if somebody commits fraud, it might happen to you regardless whether you hold shares, whether you hold royalties, or whether you hold anything else. But in our case, we have an auditor who will supervise the whole process. They will make sure that every walnut that is harvested actually is sold and handed over, so that the investor receives the return from that investment. And if not, we're committing fraud. And I don't know, I have no plans to spend the rest of my life in a Georgian prison or in a US prison or anywhere else, frankly. While there are many other ways of financing, we've chosen this for its efficiency and the low capital requirements, and because we can address a large investor pool without having to fear some certain problems. That said, we have custom solutions that we offer for high net worth individuals who have the liquidity to run proprietary projects. We have a few projects like that under our management, and they are outside the royalty contracts, and it's possible to set up different things. But this is what we offer for the reasons mentioned above. So let's look at. Sorry?
What is the minimum?
What is the minimum? Oh, I'll come to that. I will come to that. Let's look at the company structure first. We have a company in Georgia, which is Walnuts GE, and it's registered in Georgia, and it's also governed by the laws of Georgia. This company runs our day-to-day operations, and the company has an investment subsidiary in the US, which is 100% owned by the Georgian company. And the US company issues the royalty contracts to the investors. Therefore, the investors are protected by US laws in the event of fraud or great misconduct. The advantage of that is that since we do not offer this investment to US citizens, and there is no business on US soil, there are no regulatory requirements for capital raising in the US. Furthermore, since the company is seen as a disregarded entity, no taxes apply in the US for the investors. That does not mean that there are no investment, that the investment is not taxed. It can be taxed in the country of residence of the investors, and everybody should seek his own legal tax advice in order to assess the taxability. But in the US, there's no taxes that apply for the investors. So as you just asked, the minimum investment for this is $10,000 US. And for $10,000 US, you receive one royalty unit, which equals 0 to 0.1% of gross revenue of the whole company for 30 years. So handing out $10,000 gives you 0.1% of the whole 73 hectares that we're developing, and will hand you out this return for 30 years. As I said, the first yield on the plot 1 is expected in 2022. And both plots are expected to produce in 2023, and we estimate a yield of about 6%. At 2027, both plots are at full production, and with the prices and the yield estimates in mind, we think to achieve about 25% yearly return. If you average that down over 30-year contract period, then we estimated an average return of 22%, which will be paid out to the investors every time and every year after the harvest. So if you look at cumulative distribution, that means about 617% with a break-even point in the year 8 to 9. As I said, payouts are annual, and they always come every time after the walnuts are sold to a wholesaler. Well, now to give you an outlook, because that's not all what we have in mind. While we are already looking to be the biggest producer of walnuts, we are planning to go much further from here. We want to improve deeper vertical integration and build sorting and cracking and packaging facilities, and eventually end up with our own walnuts. And I can already imagine your fantastic face on a tax-free today walnuts, Christoph. But more to that maybe in a few years. We want to increase total production. We're receiving further interest to build more orchards, and will of course build more orchards in the area, and improve our trade capabilities by founding a local tree nut hub. As a matter of fact, there's many people around us that are going into nuts more and more, and especially love smart money. If you look, our neighbor is a Persian guy that owns 8,000 hectares and is building pistachio orchards. And one of the richest guys in Georgia, a businessman, has about 400 hectares of almond trees that are just located a few kilometers away from us. And yeah, it will be growing. We've been speaking to a guy who just founded Georgian Nut Association, and he says this is a hugely growing market. We are supported by an NGO which gives us not only support in terms of knowledge, like the consultant, but also has set up nice trade deals with us and introduces us to the local contracts. And lastly, while I don't want to make an investments decision that should be driven by emotional considerations, of course, my plan is not only to make this a profitable investment, but turn this farm into something else, into something more for us. What I imagine is some retreat for all investors. Many of us, including myself, we all live in cities and are largely disconnected from the agricultural life. And that comes against the backdrop that we all live for food. We all eat this stuff every day, but we don't really connect to it anymore. The trees, they're small now, but in 4 to 5 years, it will be a small forest. We are planting other tree fruits, and we'll have alleys of poplar trees that I'm looking ahead to marching in. Next year, we are planning to build some guest houses, and of course, we'll give every investor the possibility to come and stay at the farm whenever he likes and whenever it is possible. They won't be luxury villas, but they will offer us some nice retreat in a nice wooden house for everyone. And with that in mind, let me finish with that, because what could be better than looking around you and seeing these trees grow to spectacular size while they provide you with a steady passive income. Right? What do you think, Christoph? Will you join me in a few years? Actually, you'll join me very soon, right?
How tall are they actually getting, the trees? How big are they?
So, you know, the Chandler walnut is actually, the tree is designed not to, or the tree design is not to focus on producing wood, so they don't grow very high. but nevertheless, not high means they are about 3 meters tall. So they will be certainly higher than me, and probably almost as high as you are, I'd say. And yes, they are large, but of course we don't want bark, we want nuts, and therefore the trees don't grow as high, but high enough for somebody to walk in between them.
Yeah, I think it's very important for everyone to recognize it's not like this big tree in the garden with like 20 meters high with some walnuts on it. It's like a special variety which is like optimized for like fast yields and good product, right?
Yeah. Oh, I can see Alex has joined us in the meantime there.
Yeah, Alex already joined 20 minutes ago, but yeah, if he wants to say something, feel free.
I'm sorry for being late. I thought it was 10 o'clock. I see you're just practicing though.
Good to see you.
Very good. Very good to see you too. It's I had my nap this afternoon, so I hopefully I won't fall asleep during the presentation. Very interesting. I really enjoyed it. You're doing a wonderful job there.
We're still live, so do you want to contribute something?
Me? Oh no, I just you know, again, it's just I guess what on the legal side of things and the structural side of things, there's lots of ways of doing things, and there's no one right way. The advantage of the royalty contract for us is that we can begin this without the legal costs, the legal complexity, and the advantage for the investor is that you know what you're getting. At least lightning could strike every single tree, and they could you could lose your investment. There's no way to guarantee an asteroid could strike it. A lot of strange things could happen, but we can't play clever games with gross revenue. And I kind of agree with what Ivo said about that, is that we would have to be willing to commit fraud to do something to deprive people of their money here.
Okay. and he vanished into the night.
Yeah.
No,
maybe you can introduce the team. Do you have a slide on that? Because the people don't really know. So it's Ivo, it's me, it's Alex. Alex is our lawyer, basically, who designed the royalty contract. And we still have our 2 Georgian guys who are actually managing all the nuts and are very knowledgeable with it. Yeah.
Yes, of course. Let me get my screen shared on again. As I have these beautiful pictures of us here. Let me see how to do this. Play from current slide. So just as you said, there's us 2, and then we have David here. David is basically the agricultural brain behind us. He comes from a family of hazelnut producers. They both, David and Irakli, have been working together for a long time, and started this whole development. I think the first development they started was about 4 years ago in Walnuts, the first personal development. And then, like I said, David comes from a family of hazelnut producers and has been growing up around them. They are in West Georgia, and he doesn't manage that business right now, as he has been moving over. Then we have Irakli here. Irakli is David's partner out. They usually spend the time together. Like I said, we have now soon over 170 hectares in Walnuts. So we have these 2 as a management, and Irakli usually also does the whole accounting part. And then we have Alex. Like I said, he's our legal part. of it, and he has come up with a royalty contract, and yeah, is usually helping people with all sides of legal things in this matter. And lastly, Frank also is an accountant and usually assists us with several accounting issues, but is mainly a business angel, just as you are in this project, Christoph.
All right. Good to know. Yeah, actually, before we come to the questions, if you have questions, just write them in the YouTube chat. Yes. Or write them here on Facebook Live. That's the reason I hold the camera all the time here. It's not I'm playing games. I just live stream on Facebook, yeah.
I was already wondering because, I mean, you have this tendency of sometimes, you know, just drifting away into your business chats. I thought you were constantly working even while you hold the webinar.
No, I was just streaming you. Actually, what I still wanted to say about investment is I think it's perfect for nomads, for investors who don't have this, like all this compliance, all this KYC. I just saw that with another investment of me, the Free Private City. And that's like very, very tough. Like I need to have a notarized passport copy, a notarized utility bill, a reference letter of a lawyer I know for 3 years, and many other documents just to invest a little bit of money. And I mean, what we do is just very, very easy. You basically don't need to provide anything, and that makes it very, very interesting. A lot of
we don't want your utility bills. As a matter of fact, there is nothing like that here in Georgia. We wouldn't even know how to deal with these kind of things. People would look at you strangely if you give them a utility bill, because these things in Georgia don't really exist. But yeah, this is, since the whole thing is more on the US side, I mean, Alex, this is something you can answer probably better, why royalty contracts are so beneficial from that perspective. Actually, why contracts are so beneficial in terms of other complex investments here.
Well, first of all, this is, we're avoiding securities regulations because this isn't a security. The way we have it structured, it's a royalty contract. So we're freer on who we can sell to and how we can present them to the clients. You know, and that just makes our lives a lot easier if we're constantly. The U.S. is a difficult place to do securities regulations, but it's very good on contract law. And what we have here is just a basic contract that says, you know, you're going to get a percentage of the gross revenue of what we sell, whatever that may be. And that's easy to enforce. It's not regulated in the same way that securities would or banking would be. And it has a lot of tax advantages for us at least, and it can have tax advantages for the investors as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is very on point. Maybe we can start with the questions.
Sure.
Or you have anything else to add, Ivo?
No, let's jump right in. I mean, I'm not an expert in all these contracts and all of that. That's why I have here Alex here on my side. Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's jump into the questions.
Yeah, so if you want to ask questions, just go to YouTube and put them in the chat. We have already one here from Jonathan. Is there any danger that parasites destroy the trees?
Yeah, well, of course, you know, every agricultural investment runs at dangers that parasites destroy trees, or that some kind of other disease kills your plants. But this is something, you know, you have to accept when you're doing agricultural investments. It's something it's not possible to avoid. And yes, there are dangers for that, and but at the same time, you have to be aware of them, and being aware is the best way to avoid them, I'd say. We employ a lot of techniques to monitor our crops, and you know, we have agronomes who visit our farm on a regular basis, twice a week. We have basically monitor our crops with agriculture 3.0, drones that will be flying over them and seeing to the earliest to see potential risks that are developing at the earliest stages. And I think this is one of the great strengths that we actually have, because we are becoming a very large producer. These things start to make sense now in comparison to smaller producers, like you see many times in Europe, for example. And yes, you have to acknowledge their risks. On the other hand, walnuts, as I've mentioned earlier, they are very disease resilient. It's not like you're dealing with, let's say, berries or other investments or other fruits that are more prone to them, because walnuts have very strong bittern levels in their leaves, so they're not very attractive for parasites to attack them because they just don't taste as well. And the fruit itself has a big husk around the shell, which makes it harder to eat. But yes, so you know, it's no way to talk around. We could, as a matter of fact, Georgia had a big problem with the so-called stink bug last year, which has devastated hazelnut production the year earlier. But it's something, you know, that doesn't apply so much for walnuts because of the reasons that I've mentioned. But nevertheless, you know, there are risks. There are risks that you cannot avoid. As Alex said, you know, there's a lightning that might struck your plantation. It's not as likely. There's a fire that might break out and could burn down the trees. Some crazy guys could burn it down, or some disease could strike you. But at the same time, you know, you could buy some Netflix shares and then realize that these TV series are not as good as everyone thought them to be. So I think being aware of risks is important, but you don't have to overstate them.
Okay, yeah, we have 4 more questions at the moment. One from Frederick. Who is the auditor company that you mentioned previously? Name appreciated. Is it associated in any way to the company, plantation, or is it to be considered 100% neutral to the project?
So, I mean, Alex can maybe answer that, but I can give you the idea that Alex had come up with, and you can correct me if I'm wrong there. So our idea was actually to give the investors the opportunity to select the auditor themselves. We will provide them with the idea that you can, for instance, recommend one of the auditors. They are probably, we won't take one of the top 5, but most likely one of the top 10 auditors here. I'm working with the next year, for instance, on many issues right now. But actually the idea is for the investors, since it's more their due diligence to select them, to give them the opportunity to monitor it themselves or to select the auditor upon their own liking. Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, the way the contract is set up is that the investors as a group get to elect an ombudsman. Either they can, from among themselves. And this ombudsman essentially represents them and can stay on top of things, can work on behalf of the other investors to stay on top of us, make sure everything's going as planned. It's not a lot of work involved. Again, it's just a matter of how many walnuts were produced, how many walnuts were sold, how much did you get? So there's not a lot, it's not a lot of complicated accounting going on here. It's more just verification that the harvest was done properly and that the walnuts were sold at a specific price. And then from that, we generate proceeds of the royalty contract. It's the fact that it's so simple there's really not a lot of auditing to be done.
But again, if the audit, there will be an auditor selected by the investors, and he will monitor us, and we have
It's up to the investors to choose.
Yes, we have no influence on that. We can obviously recommend. I'm working with a lot of them here on different legal matters, and our lawyers, Georgian lawyers, can recommend some. But in the end, it's up to the investors as a pool, or in particular to the ombudsman, to select the right representative there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we continue with the next question. So we have a lot of now. So first from Matthias, is there a minimum amount of royalty packages we need to sell to make this thing fly? Or will it even happen if only one person invests 10K? If there is a minimum, did you already reach that?
There is a minimum, and yes, we have already reached that.
Yes, I mean, we all, like the 6 persons from the team we basically introduced, we all put down substantial amounts of money ourselves. So we can finance, I think, parts of the area, but not the full 73 hectares, right?
Well, 37 hectares are already in the ground. You can't really change any more of that. And our current development, everything, is paid already and are under full development. And none of the money has come from the investment company yet. So yes, the whole project is financed. What it's now about is to scale the project further, to buy expensive machinery, to automate processes, to have this money available for sorting and cracking facilities, and like I said, to have more vertical integration. We had a minimum amount that we needed to, it doesn't really make sense, for $10,000 to provide all the structure that we've set up. And we've reached our minimum, and therefore the whole thing will start no matter what.
Okay, second question. Can royalty packages be transferred or sold to third parties during the 30 years of their duration, like family members, foundation, etc.?
Alex, you want to answer that?
Yes, they're fully assignable. We just have some requirements to let us know who you're selling it to. You can sell it, you can transfer it, gifts, inheritance. They're fully transferable. So yes, they're fully transferable on any basis. The only thing we need is where to send the checks, because whoever buys it is going to start receiving the money. So please let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can also elaborate in that event, since foundations were mentioned. It's possible not only to own it as a private person, but also as different juridical persons. So talking about foundations, we've had this issue come up early on. We can just mention how the whole process is for a foundation or a trust, as a matter of fact.
Or companies, or there's so many different clever ways of structuring a business, so that it really just depends on the investor. Each individual has their own needs, perhaps different assets they want to incorporate into their planning. I wouldn't necessarily build your asset protection strategies based on one investment. It would involve other things. But yes, you could have a foundation or a company or a trust or some combination of those set up, so that your investments are held by these protective asset protection entities, not by you. And in that way, it's asset protected, it's more private, and it also can substantially reduce your taxes.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we leave it to that. Third question, also maybe for Alex. How does the investment process in detail work? How does the contract look at?
Well, the contract is a fairly simple package. We ask that you fill out a one-page form, give us your name, address, other things like that. Review the contract, make sure you understand it, ask us any questions. It's as far as these things go, I like to think it's not the most complicated, but there are some terms. We need to know who you are enough to be able to send you money, and it's fairly simple. Once you decide to invest, we need a one-page form filled out, the basic information, and then payment.
Well, there's another royalty investment contract that states the statutes of the whole investment, which you need to read and understand and sign as well. So in total, it's not only one. I think it's 5 pages that you have to sign, right? So don't make it easier than it actually is.
Sorry there. But there are. It's not 100 pages of gobbledygook. I tried to make it as simple and clean as possible. There's a cover sheet that says I want to invest, and then there's the contract itself, which you agree to and we sign off on, and then you own one royalty unit, and it's a fairly, I think it's fairly simple. I've seen a lot more. I've produced a lot more complicated things than that, and this is. My goal was to make it as simple as possible without losing the benefits to each party. The investor needs to be protected, and we need to be protected. I mean, everybody has to be able to rely upon their on what they get. You're putting a lot of money into this, and you need to know what you're getting. And so I say, read the contract. It's about 5 pages. It's not terribly complicated. The concept isn't terribly complicated. The business model is just a matter of will we be able to, what I like about this is we need to do it properly. We need to plant the trees properly. We need to grow them properly. We need to feed them properly. But ultimately, this isn't rocket science. We're not redeveloping some kind of complicated thing. If the sun rises, the sun will shine on our trees, but we have water. The water will feed them. We have the nutritions, and we're going to have walnuts. And and then you'll get a percentage of that.
Right.
Okay. One next question is, did you run projections of how the ROE turns out if the walnut price drops X%?
Yes, there are obviously projections on how different prices impact our profitability. At current stages, we have an operation versus expenses ratio of 16%. So either production or prices can drop by 6 for us to be at a point that we're just at break even, or turn it around. Production can fall by half, and prices can drop to a third, and we will have break even. So you can play around with these two at your own will, but the OER is about 16% at our current estimates.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question, or maybe back to the ombudsman question from Frederick, so we can just solve that first. How are you planning on guaranteeing that the mentioned ombudsman will be found? Lars actually does his job, finding the auditor, etc., or is that solely the job of the investors, in your opinion?
Well, I guess the investors should take care of that. Obviously, we have an interest, in having somebody of the investor side to talk to. And I mean, there's a few people now that have put more than $100,000 in there, and I can't imagine that any one of them would not be willing, to at least care about what we're doing there. And
his next comment is, would there be some contact information available between the participating investors? So will that be shared and the investors can take contact with each other?
Actually, we thought, why not use social media for that, make things simple in our modern days. And the idea was to set up the Slack group, and their investors can communicate and can vote on different matters. You know, you can self-organize your things. Everybody has the amount of vote as he's purchased his royalty contracts, and that's how you can come up with a good ombudsman. And you can communicate if you feel like you've been treated unfairly, either with us or with other investors, and organize yourself.
Yeah, I think it's very likely. I mean, we did that in September when we visited, that we just do like an investors conference once a year, and people congregate in Tbilisi and go down to the farm. They can just get to know each other. I think that's something we plan in future, right?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. You know, like I said, this should not only be an investment for me, at least. You know, it's also an emotional decision, not foremost, but obviously alongside with it, because I believe in this project to have a prosperous future. After doing a lot of due diligence, and I can see others identifying with this as much as I do, and therefore, yes, absolutely. Like, you know, getting together after harvesting time in, like you said, in September, looking at what we've achieved, and having some walnuts, maybe some walnut. What is it, vodka or whatever you can make out of walnuts and drinks, and maybe some creams, and there you go. Like, absolutely. But coming back to the question, you know, I fail to see how people who, you know, okay, maybe if you put a smaller amount in that you can forget about, but how people who've put in substantial amounts, you know, are not interested in what is happening with their money. So, you know, I don't know. I don't see this to be an issue, frankly.
Okay, next question from Carsten. If he understood correctly, I think he didn't. The development costs are fully paid by the royalty holders. Your management have no investors and therefore no risk. Is this kind of setup common in the royalty business?
I think then you have not understood. So far, we haven't touched a single cent of the money that we've received from royalty contract holders. As a matter of fact, the main development of 8,000 trees was done before even the concept of the royalty contract was born. So there have been substantial amounts from that side already to begin with. But even now, as we have collected money from the royalty contract holders, we haven't touched a single cent, and everything has been paid out of our own pockets. And this will continue to be the case. So we've all, actually everyone who's here now in the webinar, as well as David and Irakli, have put in a lot of money in this thing. And there's it's not something that will be paid only by the investors. It's something that we're starting, and we are seeking to scale up with further investments.
And that's also the other question, how much money we put down. But I mean, I think it should suffice when we say it's probably more than 6 figures every one of us put down to make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think it's a ridiculous question. You don't ask Jeff Bezos how much he put down to develop Amazon.
Right.
Well, it's not a bad question. It's just, you know, we have 8,400 trees planted. From those, you can calculate how many walnuts you're going to get. Those numbers can vary, but they're going to be within a range. And then once we start producing, they're going to sell them, and that's going to be a range. So frankly, I don't think it's necessarily so important how much we spent on the walnuts, which in my case, I wish I hadn't spent quite so much. I'm happy that someone else is sharing the costs. Thank you so much, everybody. And but the real thing is how much you're going to get when the walnuts start growing. And that's going to be a fairly substantial amount of money. And we need it. We need the money because we need to capitalize. There's a lot of expenses more than just planting the trees and sitting back. And, you know, I like to simplify it that all we do is sit around and watch the sunshine and that. But once those walnuts come in, it's going to be a lot of tractors and a lot of processing equipment, and it's very expensive, and you know, you need to spend money to make money.
Right, totally true. What else do we have here? How do you back up the operation management in cases persons drop out? Health issues, accidents, losing motivation, etc.
Excuse me?
How do you back up the operation management in cases persons drop out?
Well, how you do that in any other business too. You hire someone else, you know. I don't know.
But we're all investors. We're all in. We're all investors. So I think that, you know, that doesn't guarantee everything, you know.
In the game, right? We all have a lot of the game in the end. So there's a lot of motivation to keep it working. Yeah.
That's the other side, of course. Like David and Irakli, who are there on their day-to-day basis, they've put in a lot of money in to make it happen, and I fail to see how they just gonna, you know, give up on that and say somebody else has to do it. I mean, of course, at some point you might hire someone else to do the management as the project continues, but at the moment, it's a nice ringtone now. Can you turn that off?
You can hear that.
Yes. But at the end, I mean, of course, at some point you might hire somebody else to do a job for you. But right now, nobody has the interest. As I've said early on, we all have put money in there. I have no interest to give up on this project because we want this to succeed. And again, you know, even if we come to a point, let's say David dies in a car accident and Irakli falls from a tree, how do you deal with that as a company? You look for some other people who do their job, and there's some expenses accounted for management, and if they fail, or you know, something happens, God forbid it does, but then somebody else will be hired to do their job. It's like in any other.
That's important to think about, because you don't. I don't want to be. You know, I don't want to be in a situation where I can't be replaced. We all need to be replaced because none of us are, you know, immortal. On the other hand, we all are committed to this project because we've all put a lot of money into it. So if something happens, the goal is to you know, nobody's that important. There's not, you know, every one of us can be replaced if needed.
I'm important.
Well, yeah. Okay, you're important. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say you weren't.
Okay, maybe let's just finish the questions. We have 1, 2 more, 3 more. Is it possible to get payouts without banks in crypto, for example?
We don't see this happening. As a matter of fact, many people usually want to get out of crypto. I didn't know some people want to get into crypto as well. But right now, there's no plans of that. We've been discussing that, and yes, right now there's no plans. Maybe in 4 years things have changed, and but you know, it's a more complex process. You know, getting
what we can always do, what is always possible, maybe in terms of it's just an idea which came to my mind. But to do like in the community of investors, to just do some OTC deals, yeah. That, for example, one investor gets like the money in his bank account, and he just buys this guy Bitcoin or whatever. So probably there can be some arrangements made just over the counter deals or something. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, we have a lot of Bitcoin investors who are investing using fiat to buy it, but I'm sure there can be some arrangement that's of that type. But right now, you know, walnuts are not traded in any crypto yet, and we receive US dollars. The further complications that apply from turning this into crypto and then sending it over, maybe, but at this point there's no plans of doing so. And if that's really an implication so important to you? I don't know, like I can see some evangelists, you know, them only accepting payments in crypto, but if you find as a wholesaler who is ready to pay walnuts in crypto, then maybe we can talk about it. But so far we haven't found that yet.
I mean, we have very good banks in Georgia, so of course every investor, we support him to get like an account with Bank of Georgia or TBC, and it's a very good account to receive the royalties, and I think it has a lot of advantages. So
I've just came back today from Solo Bank, and I was sitting there with my new account manager and showing her which exchanges can be used to take money out from to a Georgian bank account, which is quite funny because she was like asking me, you know, which exchanges can I recommend to our clients, and as you know that I'm into the whole market, I was happy to help her, of course. But yeah, the market here, the banking sector is very open, at least until now, for crypto, and we can help you to find a convenient way to convert crypto and fiat and to invest into the project.
Okay, two more questions.
This is just my opinion about this.
Yep,
you know, if someone, I just don't want to make any promises. Like if we have to pay you X number of dollars and that's how much we owe you, and you tell us to pay it to this account, we're going to pay to that account. And this isn't my deal. I wouldn't know how to do a cryptocurrency transaction to save my life. But on the other hand, if we can do it, I don't know why we wouldn't. It's just not something, you know, we're trying to get the walnuts to grow right now. And in 4 or 5 years when we're distributing the money, if there's a way to do it, why wouldn't we? I mean, it's.
Yeah, I mean, like 5 years ago, there was basically nothing going on with crypto. There was just Bitcoin. And in 5 years, it will be probably very normal to just send the money anywhere and it gets directly converted to Bitcoin. I mean, that's even now possible. Yeah. And then, of course, we can just send in Bitcoin or in any other cryptocurrency as well. I mean, in my prognosis, Bitcoin won't exist in 5 years anymore. But of course, that's another investment decision. So we have 2 more questions and then we finish. I think one question is misunderstood as well. It is 100% of the revenue and royalty shares equals $10 million. The investment is less than $3 million. Why is there such a big spread?
Well, first of all, I was showing you the cost estimate for one development, and what we're showing, we're not selling 100% of the revenues. We're looking for a way to refinance the project. So, you know, valuing on one hand the revenue stream and looking at how much we are trying to spend on are 2 different things, which of course don't imply the future expenditures that you will have over the course of the project. And like I said, this is the expenditures of 2.8 million for project number 2, which is currently undergoing. Project number 1 has been completed already, and therefore the expenditures were not included in the whole estimate, because the trees are already in the ground, the irrigation system is there, and everything is done there already. But yes, there's as you said, a misconception between these 2 things.
And if I could add, we're not selling shares of the company, so we're not saying the company's worth $10 million because of these shares. These are royalties against the revenue, the gross revenue, and we frankly base the value more on total receipts than the valuation of our company. Frankly, I think the company will be worth more than that. Hopefully, that's what my goal is. But each royalty unit is a percentage of the gross revenues. It doesn't reflect the value of the underlying company, which is the 2 are in this case they're disconnected. You're not buying shares in the company. You're buying a percentage of gross revenue. So the total really doesn't mean anything. other than when you add up all the royalty units, that's what you get.
One more question. Is there a deadline until one has to decide to join?
There's not really a deadline in terms of that we will not accept any money, but we set ourselves, obviously, as the project matures, these units become more valuable since we get closer to harvest, and at the same time, the risk is the highest at the very start of the project. And therefore, we've decided to offer the royalty contracts at this current price only for an extended time, for a certain amount of time, and that is until we've completed planting the trees. And we've decided to be that should be the case in March. So you can continue to buy the royalty contracts until we believe that we've raised enough capital for this to close the deal. However, the price will increase at a certain stage for the reasons that I've just stated. But the current price of $10,000 per royalty unit will be available until March.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I think that's all the questions. There was just one guy asking for marijuana in Georgia. Is that actually legal? Like a hemp plantation?
No, marijuana is, as far as I know, is not legal here. It's consumption that has been legalized. But we were already planning. They wanted to do some legalization because our what is he? The party leader Ivanishvili was planning to build a private marijuana plantation. But the church intervened, and now this project has been cancelled. And what has been decriminalized is consumption. But
no,
I don't.
I was just asking for land recommendations. But I mean, if it's illegal, then you probably can't plant it in Georgia. But I mean, there are many other nice things to plant in Georgia, especially wine and some other nice fruits.
If you want to intoxicate yourself, I can only recommend the wine, which is amazing, and especially in Kakheti. We're still planning, you know, to keep a little bit of space for our upcoming vineyard, as you know, Christoph. There should be a little tax-free today vineyard coming up in the next years.
Yeah, I know you the guy doesn't mean marijuana, you meant hemp, but I think that the same applies in Georgia. But anyway, that's not our
business. Hemp, I don't know, I'm not an expert, but isn't THC illegal, not marijuana? So hemp should be able to, I don't know, like.
Yeah, I mean, that's not our business. We grow nuts, not marijuana. So that's completely everything else.
Well, some of our partners would love to be able to expand our production, but right now it's not possible.
Right.
Right. Okay. I think that's everything in terms of questions. I think I didn't forget anything.
Cool.
So yeah, we invite everyone, of course, to make themselves an image of the plantation and just visit us or Ivo and Alex in Tbilisi and drive to the plantation. I mean, now it's winter and probably not much to see there.
I wouldn't. I'm not going there. Usually, I was going there all the time, but I'm not going there right now, and I wouldn't recommend anyone to do it. It's really ugly. But you know, winter is not as long in Georgia as many think. I remember I had this visitor here few months who arrived here in March, and he was wearing this fur thing because he thought it's going to be cold. But truth is, it's not that cold here in Georgia as many think. So March, April should be very nice. And actually, let me use this opportunity. I haven't planned anything specific, but I think in March, April would be nice to organize another investors travel as we've done in August this year, right, Christoph?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. we will organize something. And I think that's a good idea to just get more people there. And actually, I think there are always like some vacations or like get to know Georgia travels. And like Sergio is our business partner. Sergio is doing now like journeys to Georgia. And I think you planned as well to offer something for just people to look for investments in Georgia, because the country is quite big, quite beautiful, and I mean a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I wish we had another hour. I could talk to you about, things that are just exploding here in many ways. For instance, like just to drop that here, tourism. Georgia is top 5 the growing tourist destinations worldwide right now. 28% year-on-year growth this year. Winter tourism in Godauri is crazy. Summer tourism at the Black Sea or even in Kakheti, wine tourism. So there's so many opportunities in that sector as well. I could talk for another hour or two about that. And yes, I'm planning for investors, to seek out opportunities there in different sectors. This is not the only project that we have ongoing or I have ongoing, and I'm happy to introduce them to other things. And alongside, yes, I'm doing a lot of things here in Georgia since I've moved here. Interesting tours, I have a 4-wheel drive, go to the mountains. When you were here in summer, we went on a horse riding trip, which I'm sure some of these butts of the guys who are with us are still hurting. But yeah, like there's a lot of things to do, and I'm happy to organize things, welcome people here, and yeah, get them to know Georgia. It's a beautiful country.
All right.
A lot of nice things here, and a lot of exciting investment opportunities. A lot of fun things to do. There's a lot of development needed, and that means opportunity.
All right, I think that's a good word in the end. Thank you very much for joining, Alex and Ivo, for presenting and answering questions. And
Sorry for being late.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, to get further info, you can just write Ivo at isie@walnuts.ge. I think that's the email address.
Yeah, or info@walnuts.ge works as well.
Info@walnuts.ge, or you can just write me and I forward you. And I think in a couple of days or weeks, we will also have a website with some more basic info about the project. So you have time until March with the current conditions to invest. And we hope, of course, that you're with us and visit us in Georgia for the walnut plantation. So I go offline now. I will just stop the recording and see you all soon.
Thanks, Christoph. Enjoy the seawater.
Bye-bye.
I will.